The King's Avatar, Chapter 1270. The Most Experienced Player. Audio source, WurshaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1270. The Most Experienced Player. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. This concluded the official events of the All-Star Weekend. Although the audience felt that it was very fulfilling, when they checked the time, they suddenly felt like they hadn't gotten enough. Wasn't it kind of a shame that the high point of the three-day event ended that quickly? That the winners had already been determined, and the players of Teams and B had already walked out of the player booths. They didn't go off stage, but mingled amongst each other. For this sort of performative match, most people didn't care too much about victory. Otherwise, how would there be that scenario of everyone crowding around to watch two people 1v1 each other? But only most people didn't care. There were always people who did care, very much. Tang Hao. When he came out of the player booth, his face was pale. In the Rookie Challenge of Season 8 All-Star Weekend, Tang Hao defeated Lin Jingyan. This battle could be considered the battle that established him as a god, cementing his position as a top player. But in this All-Star Weekend, in the team competition, he had been beaten down so pathetically. The images of the battle flashed through his mind. In front of him, the god-level players of all the other teams were all relaxed and chatting with each other, but Tang Hao just couldn't relax. It wasn't that he couldn't accept a loss. But how come his loss was so ugly, so pathetic? The cheers of the crowd seemed like mocking laughter to Tang Hao. The players didn't immediately come off stage, but a reporter from the esports channels carried his camera and flew toward the stage. This team competition ended too quickly, far out of their expectations, entirely disrupting their planned program schedule. They'd purposely left an extra-large block of time empty for the All-Star event, since they didn't want time restrictions to disrupt the broadcast of this once-a-year special event. But in the end, the team competition was over in 5 minutes. Fortunately, in the last battle of the group arena, Zhang Xinji with that cleric PK had used up a good deal of time, otherwise this All-Star competition would have ended even earlier. Sending a reporter on stage now was so that they could do some live interviews, use up a bit more of the broadcast time. These interviews hadn't been planned in advance, but these god-level players were used to being chased by reporters for interviews. Today's competition hadn't posed much of a burden, anyway, so most of them weren't in any low spirits. The reporter that rushed on stage immediately saw Zhang Xinji and Wu Yus discussing something together, and he headed toward him first. "Hello, vice-captains," the reporter greeted. These two paused in their conversation and looked at him. "Are you discussing that group arena battle from just earlier?" the reporter asked. "Yes," Zhang Xinji nodded. "What do you two think? If it hadn't been stopped, I should have had a slight health advantage at the end and I should have won," said Zhang Xinji. "That's only in your planned, ideal conditions," Wu Yus immediately retorted. It looked like the two of them had been discussing the question of who would have won that battle. The plans would have become reality. Zhang Xinji said. "You never know what will happen in a battle," said Wu Yus. "I try my hardest to minimize the unexpected," said Zhang Xinji. "Hard to say." Wu Yus shook his head. "Perhaps we should give it another try," Zhang Xinji said. "Forget it. I'm not too interested in that kind of battle," Wu Yus said. He'd already avoided having to play out such a dull battle, of course he didn't want to repeat it. After all, it would never happen again. Zhang Xinji didn't press either. He only shook his head in regret, seeming quite unsatisfied with his inability to verify the result. To the side, the reporter didn't interject. He simply recorded all of this to the camera as is. Let everyone experience the unaltered interactions of the gods after a match. Seeing that these two didn't have any more to say, the reporter began to search for a new target. Those who had had strong performances in the match would of course attract him more easily. Wang Jiexi. The reporter's eyes brightened. Wang Jiexi seemed to be giving a lesson to Tiny Herb player Gao Yingji, and the reporter immediately rushed forward. Use your best, most comfortable, most familiar method to perform, that's enough, said Wang Jiexi. But Captain, what you've been using all this time, is that your best, most comfortable, most familiar method? Gao Yingji suddenly asked. Wang Jiexi was silent for a while, and then he shook his head. That is why I hope that you can have more confidence, don't be easily shaken. You're more suited to this team than I am. Believe in yourself. Seeing Gao Yingji nod, the reporter took this chance to interject. Hello, both of you, he greeted. Captain Wang's performance in this team battle really gave us quite a shock. We never would have expected you to suddenly revive your old style. Are you planning to go back to your style again? The reporter asked. Of course not. Wang Jiexi smiled, and then looked at the stage and player booths behind him. It's good enough to be able to relax here. Maybe if Tiny Herb had the magician, they could earn even better results. The reporter said. Wang Jiexi continued to smile, but he didn't say anything. The reporter knew that he was rejecting this view, he just didn't say so out loud. The magician Wang Jiexi hadn't won anything for Tiny Herb, but after he changed, Tiny Herb had obtained 2 championships. The person in front of him knew 100 times better than him what style suited Tiny Herb better, and his own opinion was just himself trying to be smart. As he thought about this, the reporter looked at Gao Yingji, and asked, then what about little Gao? Will we have a chance to see him become a magician? Quote, this time, the reporter was asking with a joking tone. Maybe. If it's on this stage. Gao Yingji was now better at dealing with the media, and he answered the question quite well. He hadn't rejected the possibility entirely, but he said, on this stage. Yes, on the all-star stage, what wasn't possible? After obtaining another conversation, the reporter turned his head, saw Yishu not too far away, and quickly rushed up to him. This god's performance was also very strong, and he rarely accepted interviews. Even though he didn't reject them completely after his return, he was still very low-key. Whatever he could avoid, he would try to avoid, and it was no easy feat to obtain a live interview. God Yishu. The reporter saw that Yishu wasn't talking to anyone right now, and charged forward. Yishu looked at the reporter. The team competition was incredibly exciting. Was it your plan to leave the cleric out of the team competition? The reporter asked. This is what they had guessed off stage, because earlier they'd seen that argument at Team B, with Yishu apparently at the center. They didn't know that was Team B trying to pick the most energy-saving arrangement. WashOurWorldAudio.com. But looking at the final lineup, they thought that it was possibly Yishu's idea to put the cleric in the group arena, causing everyone to oppose him. Of course not. Quote, but Yishu answered with this. I just gave a random suggestion. Ha. The reporter laughed dryly. When Yishu said, of course not, he had actually thought there were some other hidden factors at play, but in the end, it really was just this. Why would you propose such a suggestion? The reporter then asked. Obviously, so we could have a more exciting and aggressive battle. Yishu said, very seriously. Instantly, the nearby Team B players who heard this all looked at him. This guy, he could really talk. When they'd made this plan, everyone liked this arrangement only because it would allow the match to finish faster. The battle really was very exciting. There were a lot of highlights. The reporter said, well, of course. After all, everyone here is an outstanding player, Yi Zhu said. And you? How would you evaluate yourself? Me? I'm probably the most experienced player here in this circle, right? Yi Zhu said. The interview was broadcast on television, but it was also shown on the display screens in the stadium. Tyranny fans obviously had no kind feelings toward Yi Zhu, but they did have to have a reason to boo him. They couldn't find any points to complain about with his earlier, very standard answers to the reporters' questions. But with these words, Tyranny's fans were instantly upset. You're the most experienced player. At least add one of the okay. Over there is our captain Han. A player from the first generation just like you. No, technically, he's even more experienced than you. You still have a year-and-a-half gap in the middle. The stadium came alive with boos, which prompted the reporter. Looking at the players around him, quite a few people were looking this way after hearing this answer. The reporter immediately asked, then what about Tyranny's captain Han Wenqing? Old Han. He can't compete with me. Yi Zhu said, brimming with confidence. The booing increased. Even the gathered gods had "You jerk, can't you stop bragging" expressions as they continued to watch. Why is that? You're both players from the first generation, and Captain Han Wenqing. Has he played in the Challenger League? Yi Zhu directly interrupted the reporter with his explanation. Silence. Played in the Challenger League? Fuck, you're counting that experience? Everyone was shocked, but if they were really talking from this standpoint, then indeed, Han Wenqing's experience was slightly inferior. But everyone was glad not to have that sort of experience. Playing in the Challenger League. That absolutely wasn't a joyful experience for a top-tier god, but this guy actually made treasure out of this trash, counting this as part of his accumulated experience. Is there anyone else like you shamelessly increasing their own level like this? Boo. This time, it wasn't just the Tyranny fans. The rest of the audience, even some of the players off stage, the gods on stage, they were all booing Yi Zhu. Yi Zhu smiled bitterly, waving his hand as he said to the reporter, "They're just jealous. Jealous your ass." The reporter felt unwell, and even the cameraman had shaken unstably. The reporter chuckled awkwardly. He felt like his head had crashed, and he couldn't think of what direction to go next with the interview. Fortunately, from the shock Yi Zhu had provoked, he picked out a target. Han Wenqing, the captain of Team Tyranny. Han Wenqing, the boss of this area, the one who lost to Yi Zhu in experience because he hadn't played in the Challenger League. Captain Han, regarding Yi Zhu's words just now, do you object? The reporter asked, rather directly. After all, the two of them had been death enemies for 10 years. His accomplishments in the Challenger League are indeed worthy of pride, said Han Wenqing. End chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1271. All-Star Armory, audio source, wushaworldaudiobook.com. Chapter 1271, All-Star Armory. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Han Wenqing's answer surprised the reporters somewhat. These bitter enemies of 10 years had never yielded to each other on stage, but their relationship off-stage wasn't quite what the reporters had imagined it to be. The mutual respect between heroes. The reporters weren't too interested in such a dry topic, but when Han Wenqing said that Yi Zhu's results in the Challenger League were worthy of pride, thinking about it a little, he was right. Leading a team full of players who had been scraped together from God knows where at the last minute, he had defeated excellent era and emerged victorious from the Challenger League. Why wouldn't such miraculous results be something to be proud of? In that case, to say it was a fruitful experience was in fact completely correct. The reporters thought about it and suddenly realized that Yi Zhu and Han Wenqing seemed to resonate on some kind of level. Could it be because they were both practical and realistic people? practical and realistic. When this phrase popped up in their minds, the reporters all shuddered. Calling Han Wenking practical and realistic was fine, but Yi Xiu. The reporters refused to entertain this notion any further. They were completely unwilling to accept such an idea. The All-Star Weekend was hosted at Tyranny's Stadium, but in the All-Star competition on the last day, Tyranny's two players didn't have too prominent a role. Zhang Xinji's cleric was sent off to fight in the group arena, while Han Wenking was the second to be eliminated from the team competition. As such, the fans of Team Tyranny, who were on site, were a little dissatisfied. In the All-Star Weekend, most of the time, everyone would do their best to bolster the reputation of the host team's players, letting him perform more beautifully and becoming the MVP of the All-Star competition. But this time, the title of All-Star competition MVP was instead stolen away by Wang Jiexe. The magician style that he showed off during the competition had defeated Tang Hao and Sun Xiang in quick succession, and he was unquestionably the most brilliant star in the competition. In sharp contrast to his beautiful performance was Tang Hao's miserable one. Evidently, in this all-star competition, it was impossible for everyone to be happy and satisfied. Even so, the curtains finally fell on this event. The teams each regrouped and went home, and the media wantonly reported on the various magnificent scenes produced over these 3 days. But to the pro players, these 3 days were simply not worth focusing on, because this event and the true goal that they were pursuing were completely unrelated. As everyone returned home, each team immediately started preparing for round 18 of the regular season. In round 18, the intense matches of strong teams facing each other were everywhere. The home and away teams respectively were as such. Team Tiny Herb against Team Misty Rain. Team Blue Rain against Team Void. Team Tyranny against Team 100 Blossoms. Team Samsara against Team Thunderclap. And finally Team Happy against Team Wind Howl. This kind of round presented a truly difficult decision for the broadcasters. And after weighing their decisions over and over again, they finally decided to show the match between Team Samsara and Team Thunderclap. Thunderclap's performance in the team competitions this season had been discussed with great enthusiasm, but Samsara, they were far too strong, making everyone somewhat numb to their formidable strength. Team Samsara had won every single one of their 17 rounds, an achievement even more exceptional than Team Thunderclap's. Team Thunderclap's consecutive victories in the team competition were unfortunately halted in round 16 by Team Happy. Even so, people didn't lose faith in Thunderclap because of this. When this team that relied on precise execution of their strategies met Samsara's lineup with 4 All-Stars, what kind of a battle would ensue? This match was thus selected to be the one broadcasted live, as it would evidently attract more than enough viewers. The players were busily preparing for their upcoming matches and the television stations were busy selecting which match to broadcast. But the big teams' managements were currently collating the opinions of the team members, carefully considering whether or not any adjustments need to be made in the winter transfer window. What about the Alliance? After this All-Star Weekend, they had released a new list, the All-Star Armory. No matter whether it was in-game or in the pro scene, of all the equipment on a character, the one that drew the most attention was without a doubt the weapon. And now, the Alliance had compiled a list of all the weapons of each character in the pro circle, letting players vote in order to decide on this All-Star Armory. To those in the know, this was probably in order to do a survey before making products based on these weapons, but no matter what, the players were undoubtedly excited about this. The moment the list came out, the votes poured in non-stop, and the Alliance made a new rule: the Armory rankings would reset every month, and the results would be tallied at the end of the year. After a few days, the All-Star Armory had already seen some clear distinctions in its rankings. The weapon in first place was the Myriad Manifestation umbrella of Team Happy's Lord Grimm. The silver lettering showed that this was a piece of self-made equipment, but having a level 70 weapon on the list was exceedingly irksome. Glory's update had been around for a year already, and weapons were always the #1 priority of equipment research. To this date, the number of self-made weapons that hadn't reached level 75 was exceedingly small, not to mention the #1 rank in the All-Star Armory. It couldn't be helped. The Myriad Manifestations umbrella's novelty was far too eye-catching. In the All-Star voting, Yizhu was ranked lower than Josekai, but in this armory, the Myriad Manifestations umbrella had outranked Cloud Pierce's Wildfire and Shattered Frost by a few ranks. This result had made many people exceptionally gloomy. It was just as those in the know had said. This All-Star Armory could be said to be a survey of the players' interest in weapon-based merchandise. But now, the Myriad Manifestations umbrella's popularity had far exceeded that of other weapons, making the merchandise manufacturers very jittery. Myriad Manifestations umbrella. It wouldn't be enough to just make an umbrella and call it a day. The biggest characteristic of the weapon was its transformations. If it didn't transform, how could this weapon be popular? This kind of thing that could transform, dismantle, and reform could be created in-game by ignoring some of the rules of science here and there. But to make it a real piece of merchandise and fully replicate its transforming ability, how much meticulous design and planning would be required? How complicated would the assembly of such a product be? How long would it take to manufacture? Finally, how much would it cost to make? A high cost of production would mean a high price tag. The Myriad Manifestations umbrella would have a price tag far more demonic than other merchandise. And it was so demonic that those professionals who understood the market for merchandise all felt that this was too crazy. The Myriad Manifestations umbrella could not be fully replicated, but not fully replicating it would definitely impact sales, making many people feel very regretful. This Yizhu, why was he always such a pain? In the past, he hadn't allowed Excellent Era to make too much of a profit off of merchandise based on him. WooshAWorldAudio.com. Now, he had easily created an extremely popular and famous weapon, but at the end of the day, it was unreplicatable. This guy, was he deliberately suffocating these businesses? All of those in the business who had known Yizhu in the past were now bitterly complaining inside. But no matter what, the Myriad Manifestations umbrella was extremely popular. Making 2 or 3 of the forms was something worth trying out, and so the producers of this weapon merchandise took the initiative to get in touch with Happy. These matters were all handled by Chen Guo. Over the past half a year, she had gotten familiar with managing the team, allowing Yizhu to single-mindedly focus on the competitive aspect, so he wouldn't have to expend too much effort on other things. At present, aside from these collaborations, the winter transfer window opening was also something that would create a lot of work for the teams. Team Happy's line of thinking during this transfer window was very simple. Don't buy and don't sell. In effect, they wouldn't take part. But while not buying would allow them to avoid a few disturbances, not selling couldn't stop other teams from making inquiries. With the impressive results that Happy had, their value of their members had also seen a significant increase. On top of that, they were a grassroots team new to the alliance. After half a year of interaction, everyone knew that Happy's financial prowess wasn't anything impressive, and that their conditions were a little more arduous. As such, in a lot of people's eyes, Happy was like a poor child holding a brick of gold. While they couldn't snatch the entire thing away, they could spend some money to take at least a chunk of it, right? Qiao Yivan, Steamed Bun, Mofan and even Yizhu had all been given offers by various people. But at the end of the day, the buyers all ran into a wall and had no choice but to turn back. Chen Guo didn't show the slightest intention of letting go of any of their players, making everyone unable to see a hope in negotiating a deal. Very quickly, on the 10th of January, round 18 would begin. In the past 10 days, there were some teams that had closed some deals, but the winter transfer window was always a small event. A transferring core players, like in Season 8, where excellent Tira managed to dig out Sun Xiang, was very rare. In this season, some teams had stable results, while others were more unstable, but seemingly no team had a big enough conflict between their core players and normal players that they need to use the winter transfer window to resolve it. The teams with the greatest rumors of making a transfer were Team Misty Rain and Team Windhowl. Team Misty Rain's new playstyle this season had not created any breakthroughs for them thus far. And with 86 points, they sat at 10th place in the rankings, which was their worst result in the past few years. In a situation where their playstyle had yet to bear fruit after half a season, many people guessed that Team Misty Rain would make some adjustments to their roster. As for Team Windhowl, they had accumulated 112 points and sat at 6th place, which was a seemingly decent result, but it fell short of their expectations. They were a team that was aiming for the championship title, but this season, they had lost most of their matches against strong teams, causing them to begin to doubt themselves somewhat. Upon Fang Rui's departure, the position of second-in-command had fallen to Lu Hao, who had willingly transferred which had somewhat disrupted the structure of Windhowl's core. The criminal duo of a brawler and thief was what they had relied on for many years. And after Fang Rui's departure, they hadn't given up on their thief, instead spending money to invite Team Blue Rain's thief player, Lin Feng, giving him the all-star character, Doubtful Demon. But at the end of the day, Lu Hao's Spellblade had taken a higher position, even snatching a place in the all-star rankings, making his standing in the team very clear. And Lin Feng, he held an all-star account in his hands, but was still far from making the list of all-stars. In comparison with 100 Blossoms, Zhou Yuan had relied purely on the fans' attachment to his account, but he still managed to send himself and dazzling 100 Blossoms into all-stars. It was evident that Lin Feng's performance was not particularly outstanding, although Doubtful Demon's standing was far inferior to that of Dazzling 100 Blossoms. Would Team Windhowl make any adjustments to their roster? Everyone was making their own conjectures, and some fans even appealed for them to ask Fang Rui to come back. But this kind of idea could only be a fanboy's wishful thinking. Fang Rui went to Team Happy, even going so far as to put in the effort to change classes. Now, when his class change had finally begun to show results, and when Happy was still a step higher than Windhowl in rank, they wanted him to go back to Windhowl and revert to playing a thief. These people, they were probably counting on Fang Rui to have some kind of undying love for Windhowl. Would such a situation occur? Surprisingly, there were really reporters who went online to ask Fang Rui this question. "I will go back," Fang Rui replied. The reporter was completely stunned, then ecstatic. This news was truly too explosive. Fang Rui, he was actually willing to return to Windhowl. On the 10th of January, "I will return." Fang Rui even gave a concrete timing afterwards. When the reporter looked at it, he suddenly understood. Fang Rui would return, but as an opponent, although Great Fang Rui, the 10th of January is Happy's home game. The reporter reminded him, "Is it? How stupid of me, what a waste of my beautiful lines. After playing at All Stars, I can't even count now." Fang Rui shouted at End Chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1272 Meeting Force with Force. Audio source. WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1272 Meeting Force with Force. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. January 10th finally arrived. Neither Misty Rain nor Wind Howl made any transfers before this day. Wind Howl's original team traveled to City H one day ahead of time to warm up and get used to the setup. Wind Howl's vice-captain Lu Hao received a good welcome from City H. It could be seen that the Excellent Era fans were still supportive of this former Excellent Era player. In the pre-match interview, Lu Hao expressed his deepest condolences towards Excellent Era's disbandment and wished New Excellent Era good luck. He also talked about New Excellent Era's current situation in the Challenger League very precisely and clearly, immediately touching the feelings of many Excellent Era fans. As for the upcoming match, Lu Hao didn't talk too much about it. Wind Howl's captain, Tang Hao, didn't accept the pre-match interview. After the All-Stars weekend, there were rumors that Tang Hao was feeling down because of his performance at All-Stars. These rumors were rather surprising. Who would have thought that this god would actually care so much about All-Stars? Our captain. His condition is great. He didn't accept the interview because he wants to fully focus on this match. Wind Howl has performed well in our previous 2 matches. We want this momentum to continue. Happy's performance this season has already told us that they aren't a weak team, so we also need to prepare for them seriously, Lu Hao said about Tang Hao. Wind Howl's Lu Hao and Guo Yang originated from City H, but they didn't have too much to do with Happy. When Happy beat Excellent Era in the Challenger League, the 2 of them had already left Excellent Era. However, Wind Howl and Happy were only 5 points apart on the rankings. After this match, the placings might change. Fang Rui, a former Wind Howl player, was another focus point in this match. Many people wanted to see Fang Rui take revenge. After all, his departure from Wind Howl had been quite sad. Everyone saw that Wind Howl had let go of Fang Rui to construct a new team. Tonight, Happy's home ground, the Sea Ocean Stadium, was a full house. Happy's outstanding record had conquered more and more City H Glory players. Just by looking at the number of seats filled, you wouldn't be able to tell that Happy was a new team in the alliance. Skill was what mattered in competition. This logic wasn't wrong. The match was about to begin. First up was the individual competition. Happy's home crowd immediately roared with all their strength. 17. If Yishu won this individual round, his win streak would be at 17. He had always been the first to go up in the individual competition, so before the lineup even came out, Happy's fans were already cheering. Happy's fans didn't shout for nothing. Yishu stood up from his seat and waved his hands towards the crowd. Amidst the energetic cheers and applause, he went onto the stage. Yishu had always been a symbol in this city's glory community. After his return, his overwhelming record-breaking win streak and the unmasking of his mysteriousness amassed countless fans. The majority of these fans were on the older side. Among them, quite a few had already left the glory scene, but Yishu's return aroused their former passion and nostalgia for the game. In the glory game, many old accounts that hadn't logged in for a long time started playing again. Yishu was the symbol of that generation. That generation's players couldn't feel the same passion from chasing the new gods like Zhou Zekai, Sun Xiang, and Tang Hao. But now, their passion had been reignited on the stage. Yishu walked onto the stage. Who would Team Wind Howl send out as their first player? The current consensus by numerous analysts was that Yishu's fixed ordering in the individual competition was a way to gain the upper hand in the morale battle. Yishu always appeared first. He never hid. Then, how could the opponents respond? Send out a strong player to fight. If that player lost, the team's morale would take a hit. If the team sent out a weak player, it would be like Tianji's horse race, but breaking the team's momentum right at the start of the match might not achieve such ideal effects. As a result, Happy's move was difficult to deal with. We're going to put our strongest player up first and we'll wait for you to beat him. Do you dare? Yishu's win streak seemed to be taunting them. A weak team wouldn't dare to take up this challenge and usually just threw away this round. But some teams really would try to fight this morale battle. After all, if they really could beat Yishu, it would be a huge blow to Happy's morale and a huge boost to their own team's morale. Happy's move was a double-edged sword. However, Yishu was confident in waving this double-edged sword around. In the past 16 rounds, he had only injured and never been injured. What will Wind Howl do? The ambitions of this team were very high. The ambitions of this team's captain were very high. The ambitions of this team's rookies were very high. It was unlikely for them to throw away the first match. Who would they send up? Their captain Tang Hao. Would they send their core player to fight Yishu and give up on the group arena? Speaking of which, no team had made this arrangement yet. Would Wind Howl do it? Some looked towards Wind Howl's seats. Some stared at the screen. On Wind Howl's lineup display, the name of their first player slowly flipped into view. Tang Hao. They really sent out Tang Hao. Sure enough, Wind Howl was the first to take the gamble, directly bringing out their captain and core player to fight against Yishu. Wind Howl's loyal fans, who came all this way to support their team, cheered for their team's aggressiveness and pride. However, their shouts were quickly drowned out by the boos and laughs by the home crowd. If we aren't remembering wrong, didn't your captain Tang Hao just get destroyed by our captain at All Stars? Happy's fans had the lung power. Even though All Stars was just a show match, who cared? Just find an example and spout it as the truth. What could Wind Howl do? Explain patiently that All Stars didn't count? Perhaps that might work in a forum, but in this stadium's atmosphere, words alone didn't hold enough power. They could only feign ignorance. However, Happy's taunts were quite painful to listen to. The one in the most pain would be Tang Hao, though. At All Stars, even though the public didn't care, he definitely did care. Now, because of the taunts from Happy, he cared even more. His two fists were clenched tightly. These two hands had helped him win everything, taking down all those voices he didn't want to hear. This time, he had decided to use these two hands again, to silence the Happy fans. Victory will be Wind Howl's. As soon as the match began, Tang Hao immediately declared that he would win, and Demon Subduer rushed straight towards the center. At All Stars, no one had moved strategically, so Tang Hao didn't either. What's more, when Yishu chose 1v1 stages, he never picked anything complicated. His maps were always the simple and direct. WuxRWorldAudio.com. The two characters met decisively at the center of the map. Lord Grimm had a longer range. His myriad manifestations Umbrella's gun form turned into a Gatling gun and sprayed a rain of bullets. Tang Hao didn't retreat. Demon Subduer tore right through the bullet rain. It was just a Gatling gun. It wasn't enough to hold him back. Gatling gun finished firing in the blink of an eye, and Demon Subduer had forcibly pulled the distance closer. Lord Grimm still had plenty of skills though. His character retreated, while firing anti-tank missiles. 3 missiles formed a triangle, shooting out from the gun in parallel like a fan. However, these still couldn't stop Demon Subduer's rush. Demon Subduer weaved between 2 missiles precisely and swiftly. This little technique was nothing in front of top gods. and at this moment, Lord Grim had finally entered Demon Subduer's attack range. Demon Subduer raised his hands and threw a handful of sand. You could take the hit, but you had to turn your gaze away from it. However, Lord Grim had an umbrella in his hands. With a whoosh, it opened and blocked the sand. This response was within Tang Hao's expectations. The purpose of a direct sand toss was for that instant where the opponent's sight was no longer on him. Whether it was turning around or blocking with a shield, the outcome was the same. Demon Subduer threw the paralysis needle he had prepared. If the needle hit a target, it would paralyze the target. Brawlers were filled with these dirty little tricks. Paralysis needle was thrown practically the instant Lord Grim's umbrella opened. Tang Hao was banking on Yi Xiu closing his umbrella after blocking the sand toss. In that case, the paralysis needle couldn't be dodged and it would strike Lord Grim. But after the sand toss was blocked, Lord Grim didn't retract his umbrella. His umbrella stayed wide open. The precisely timed paralysis needle stabbed the umbrella canopy and fell down without even making a sound. Tang Hao was gloomy. Seeing that the umbrella wasn't going to be closed anytime soon, he might as well use it as a cover. Demon Subduer rushed forward, holding a brick in his hands. The brick would be thrown as soon as he reached him. Lord Grim didn't retract his umbrella, but he rushed forward as well. Charge. A knight skill. The shield was a knight equipment, and it didn't stop this skill from being used. Using charge with a shield would carry the same momentum, but it lacked the damage. Tang Hao didn't dare disregard it. A shield charge dealt no damage, but shields had shield attack. At All Stars, Yi Xiu had used this trick and even Huang Shaoshan fell for it. Tang Hao remembered that scene and didn't dare borrow the shield as a cover anymore. He hastily shifted diagonally and pulled the distance between them a bit. He raised his arms and threw a brick. But in this instant, Tang Hao clearly saw that the Lord Grim behind the umbrella was looking towards the side, staring right at him. My opponent knows. By the time Tang Hao realized this, the brick had already been thrown by Demon Subduer. Then, he saw Lord Grim draw his sword from the umbrella handle with a sword draw. A sword light flashed out in front of him. Dodge. Demon Subduer had just stepped towards him. Which way should he dodge? Forward, backwards, left, right. The sword light covered all of his options. Hit. Demon Subduer's blood sprayed into the air. End chapter.